And now, as ever, to the papers, the Brexit party under Nigel Farage is going click, click, click up in the polls all the time, and that really provides the backdrop for today's political news. The Sunday Times sums it up like this: populist surge sinks Tories and squeezes Labour. The Observer is looking at the Labour Party side. They say Labour MPs fear their Brexit line will hand votes to the Lib Dems, and I'll be talking to Jeremy Corbyn about that very shortly. There's the Sunday Express. They've got a big poll, and they again summarise it by saying that Britain says, let Nigel Farage lead the Brexit talks if he wins these European elections. And it also shows a really large percentage of people now want a no-deal Brexit. And then there are lots of polls, of course, that's just one. And then the Sunday Telegraph there has a story about Theresa May and the British veterans from Northern Ireland alleging that she has betrayed them. And again, we will be talking about all of that. Now, if you're wondering why we look a little bit different today, it's because our usual studio is being kitted out in grand, spiffy style for the big EU election results programme next Sunday. With me to review the papers are Sarah Vine, Stacey Dooley and Ella Whelan. Sarah, let's start with you and the politics.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about all of today's papers is that the only thing that stands out really is Farage and how well he's doing. And it's interesting, you know, we've got John Major in the Times talking about how we need to regain the modern middle ground of politics, but the voters are cleaving towards they're becoming more and more polarised. I mean, this poll here says 63% would just like to leave without a deal. I think that's probably to do with Brexit fatigue. I think people are just like, oh, just do it now.
Take it away.
Just please make it stop. So I think there's an element of that going on. But I think Farage himself is fascinating because he just has one message. He's very clear and simple and easy to understand. And he's a little... I mean, what we must remember is that this polarisation thing is not just us in the UK. You know, in Italy we've got Salvini somewhere who's incredibly sort of right wing, also doing very, very well. The Spanish have just very narrowly avoided having quite a right wing government. So it's interesting. This is a massive trend, and of course we've got Trump coming over next week or the week after, just to remind us of what polarised politics looks like.
That guy in Italy was saying, wasn't he, I quite fancy working with Nigel Farage,
yes.
You know?
Yeah. Nigel's been saying he's learnt a lot from Salvini as well, yeah.
And I think it's a relative shame that the right has managed to capitalise the idea of populism. The two kind of get used interchangeably, populism, populists and right-wingers. And actually, it's, you know, there's scope for something very exciting happening in politics at the moment where you've got mass engagement with politics, whether it be Brexit or across Europe, people wanting change. Something in me says we shouldn't let people like Farage be able to claim this. There should be something else on offer.
What's also interesting is the way that these characters cut through, and the way they do it is that they don't use... I mean, I think this is something that the Tories have a problem with particularly, which is that their operations sort of system is just very old-fashioned. You know, Farage and Salvini, they talk directly to people, and we live in this sort of social media age. So the idea that you're still operating along these very old-fashioned party lines where it's the whole sort of, you know, it feels fusty, and that's why people perhaps aren't so engaged.
Stacey, because again, thinking of Farage, one of the things he's got, when he says something, he says what he wants to say, whereas lots of politicians are looking over their shoulders, wondering about their colleagues, wondering about the party line.
That's exactly why people find him so attractive. Yeah, he's very concise, he's very clear, he's very transparent. You know, whether you agree with him or fundamentally disagree, you know where he stands.
But I think we'd be wrong to suggest that this was just a kind of case of communication or something as shallow as personality. It's actually the fact that the key thing is his message, which is democracy and Brexit, which is the thing that has interested people. I think in another situation in which we had someone else putting forward this message, it would be just as popular. There are left-wing candidates within the Brexit Party.
I do think personality, though, is, going back to what you said, but personality in politics is very important. Look at how well Boris is polling. Yeah. And he is a huge personality. People like strong characters. You know, they really do.
They like people that they think they can trust, that the person, you know, what they're saying, they believe in what they're saying.
Yeah. Do you think the outcome of this is therefore that the Conservative Party, looking at what's happening in the country, are likely to go for a strong Brexiteer as their next leader? No names, no facts.
I think the concern, so if you had been saying in the leadership contest 6 months ago, I think the big issue would have been who can deliver a decent Brexit. I think now it's more who can win a general election, because it feels like that's where that's the biggest danger. So obviously, the parliamentary party needs to make those considerations. They need to balance choosing someone who is popular in the wider country and with the just with ordinary people, but someone who can also unite the party. That's the most important thing, because at the moment we're just it's just so split.
Ella, I think you're going to vote for the Brexit Party, you've said.
I am.
Despite your reservations about Nigel Farage, that will upset the gentleman who's writing a long column in the Sunday Times.
Here is a fantastic reason
Michael Heseltine.
why I am voting for the Brexit Party, because Michael Heseltine wrote, he says that Brexit seeps its poison into every family, age group, class and region. I mean, it's that kind of disdain for democracy that I think is pushing people towards the Brexit Party, which has a very clear message on democracy. I mean, Heseltine's an arch-Remainer, and in this article he's talking about the fact that he's going to rebel. He's not going to vote for the Tories, he's going to vote for Bill Newton-Dunn, his local Liberal Democrat candidate, because he hates Brexit so viciously and because he's so set against it. I think it's a wonderful example of the kind of arrogance among certain politicians, that they think that they're, in relation to the referendum, they just don't see it as an issue that they have to listen to, and that's why people want change.
What we shouldn't do is forget that there is an agenda in Westminster as well to try and resolve this. Theresa May is making her big, bold new offer in the papers today, and this is to bring back the withdrawal bill and to try to persuade MPs yet again to back
Fourth time lucky, Andrew.
A teeny little column for something that's billed as so big and so bold. I'm sure she'll be disappointed with that, but there is really nothing new going on here. I mean, as far as we know, that any kind of change in relation to the withdrawal bill is going to be slight. And there's a really great point that she makes in it. I don't think she realises what she's saying. She says, while the deal MPs are to vote on will be different, the dynamics of their decision will remain the same. The dynamics of the House of Commons has not changed, and whether or not she tinkers a bit with the deal, I think the problem is that our politicians do not want to deliver on Brexit until a Prime Minister comes to terms with that and takes a bold step forward, which would be ensuring, making sure that no deal happened, making sure that Brexit happened. It's all for the birds.
I think as well, everyone. Sorry to interrupt. I think everyone's assuming October the 31st is such a long way away. It isn't.
No.
Like before you
Very
know it,
close.
we'll be there.
Don't waste this time, Tusk told the British.
That's
We seem to
right.
be doing our best to do that.
So
now,
give
you've
us
chosen a story
extension,
from the
that
Sunday
would be
Times there, Stacey, which
That's right.